For Sentinel.com, this is Ira Winderman with your latest Ask Ira Miami Heat mailbag. Our first question today comes from Michael in Hollywood, who asks, who will be taking the game winners next season for the Heat? Michael, there's a difference. Are you talking who will be taking the final shots or who will be taking the winning shots? And those are two different things. Only for the good teams with the right players do they become one and the same. And that's where I'm really curious to see how much of a true go-to player Goran Dragic can become with the Heat, with no one in his way this season, not like the way it was for him with the Suns or even with the Heat when Dwayne Wade was in place. Because to me, that's what it's all about in the NBA. Contenders have that one definitive player who can step up and make a difference at the moment of truth. Look at the Heat's own division. With the Wizards, they can turn to John Wall. With the Hornets, to Kemba Walker. In the Atlantic, the Knicks can turn to Carmelo Anthony. The Raptors to DeMar DeRozan, the Celtics to Isaiah Thomas, and in the Central, the Cavaliers have LeBron James, the Pacers Paul George, the Bulls Jimmy Butler, the Pistons Reggie Jackson. They're all the type of players who can step forward and make that one shot when you need it. With Pat Riley's new mix this season, you look and you're not sure if they have that one player. Since the departure of Dwayne Wade, there are other teams like this. Teams like the Magic and the Hawks and the Nets and the 76ers and the Bucks, which is among the reasons some have the Heat looking as an outsider when it comes to this year's playoffs. Our second question comes from Javier. It's more of a statement. He said, don't the experts realize that when the Heat are put as underdogs, that they overachieve? He says he thinks with this young group it could be as dynamic as the team has had in years, save for the Big Three era. He points out how they're young, athletic, fast, and hungry, and says this team will overachieve to the levels what Toronto did last year. Javier, my issue with all of this is the players, some of the veterans the Heat signed. I agree with you. I'm looking forward to the Heat's returning young players. I think that's what you build off of. That's why I'm not so sure if some of the veterans signed in free agency might actually get in the way. To me, give me a lot of Hassan Whiteside, a bunch of Justice Winslow, some Josh Richardson, some Tyler Johnson, maybe even some Briante Weber. I think that's how you're going to grow this team. With the players, interestingly enough, who were with the team last season. Factor in Chris Bosh and Goran Dragic as players who return on long contracts. I think that's where the growth of this team comes from. And our last question comes from Masood in Tucson, who says, this Chris Bosh story is taking a long time to be clarified and settled. My heart goes to Chris and his family for such a devastating health issue. But there has to be some solution, and we have to get some clarity. Masood, I don't think that's the case. I mean, sometimes with health issues, you don't know until you know. This isn't an ACL or a groin or a hamstring where you can say this is the typical range of rehab. With the recurrence of blood clots, there's no such timetable, especially for an athlete at the highest level of the game. Patience is the only option at the moment, no matter how much patience is required. Those are today's 3 questions. We'll be back tomorrow with 3 more. For Sentinel.com, I'm Ira Winderman.